Hello, everybody. How you doing?
Doing good. How are you, Frank?
I'm wonderful. I'm wonderful. So I guess we're going to talk about this trombone thing a little bit, huh?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, well, we start with long tones.
Absolutely. Let's
All
go
right.
into long tones, then we'll move into lip slurs, and we'll also discuss breathing as well.
Yeah, and all that, too. There's something that we did not talk about very much, and if you don't mind if I, how should I say, veer off the script just a little bit.
Go ahead.
And that is, the purpose of long tones is to build tone, endurance, etc. But everything that we say about it is contingent upon there being a reasonably intact, correct embouchure. And in my experience, I have had trombone players who've played for 2 and 3 years, kind of move their whole program, and they have stuffy tones, they're puffing their cheeks, they have air pockets around the mouth everywhere, the throat is constricted, all of the things that you go, oh my God, what about this? So,
Absolutely.
and it's frustrating for the kids. So the sooner we can cast some light on those things, the better. So do you feel comfortable discussing just some, how should I say this, basic requirements of a good embouchure?
Absolutely. For me, good embouchure means a good seal on the mouthpiece. We don't want excess air escaping through our corners of our mouth or the top or the bottoms of our lips. We want all the air to be very focused through the center of the mouthpiece. Now, in order to do that, we need very tight and controlled corners. And in order to do that, I was taught to pinch them down and then almost bring them down as far as you can in order to ensure a proper seal and buzz.
Exactly. A couple of things, if you don't mind me adding a couple of things.
Absolutely.
I found that getting a young player to use this little poo, kind of firms that right off the bat, and at least gets them in the ballpark. I've also found that sometimes using swizzle sticks or coffee stirrers that you insert back four of the mouthpiece will help them to center the mouthpiece with the aperture that we find in the embouchure. And for those of you who are new to these kinds of terminologies, the aperture is just a little football-shaped hole right in the middle of the two lips that you use to create the passage for air. So you want to make sure that's aligned with the bore of the mouthpiece, and a swizzle stick or a coffee stirrer can assist in pinpointing the accuracy of that placement.
Absolutely.
Basic stuff.
And tight corners. Always keep those corners tight and keep a nice firm embouchure is the goal here, not constricted, firm.
Yeah. Okay, I feel better now.
All right, now let's go into it. So first, let's go ahead and talk about buzzing, if that's okay.
Yeah.
We've already sort of mentioned a few points on buzzing here, and then we'll go into our long tones from buzzing. It seems buzzing is a concept that a lot of newer musicians seem to maybe overlook in terms of building a core sound. They're very focused on trying to play as high or as loud as they can, when a lot of this beginning practice could be done just on the mouthpiece by itself to produce a great sound. Now, a couple tips for buzzing is that we always want to keep the throat unrestricted. We want no tension. And this is something Mr. Williams can elaborate more on.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I actually learn. Shout out to Larry Clark, who was vice president of Carl Fisher, one of my former students. And now he has his own publishing company, one of the great composers in our country as well. Is I had him do a clinic for me with the cadets of Bergen County when I was teaching that horn line. And they sounded so fat when I came back. I'm like, man, what did you do? He says, it's the vowel sound, man. It's just that opening the throat. I go, how would you do that? And he had them saying, A, E, I, O, U. And the ooh causes the soft palate to drop and opens the back of the throat. So those of you who are observing, you can do this right at home while we're talking about it. A, E, I, O, U on one pitch, and you can feel the relaxation and the opening in that throat, and that is going to ensure a unrestricted opening in the throat, not just for the production of sound, but also for the intake of air. And while we are on that, if that throat is set properly and you take air in properly, you can actually feel a cold spot in the back of the throat at just about this point. And that is going to ensure that the air you're taking into your body is absolutely unrestricted. A-E-I-O-U, air goes in, you can feel the cold spot. One last thing, as we're talking about this one thing, it has a little bit to do with breathing, but also the use of air. As you take air in, do not cap the airstream. What are you talking about? Well, here's capping the airstream. 1, 2. I stop the air.
Right.
Never get a sound, never get a good sign. The idea is to take the air in and immediately spin it out. So you take air in, 1, 2, in one motion. In, without any capping and without developing any tension in the throat that will come if you try to cap the airstream.
And that's something I see a lot of students do when they're first starting, is when they take a big breath, they think, let me just inhale as much as I can, hold, and then play for the biggest sound possible, which is not the correct way. We want that air to be either moving in or moving out. It does not need to be stationary.
Always moving, baby. Always moving.
That's right. And going back to the A-E-I-O-U syllable practice. Now, it's not you, it's ooh. Okay, I don't know if you guys caught that. It's very easy to get that mixed up. So say you, right? And then say ooh. You can feel the chamber difference, the opening. And all of that room is room for the air to travel through, right? And if we're constricting that airflow, the air cannot move as fast.
Yes. Not only is it room for the air to go through, but it is also expanding the resonating chamber inside your mouth. So we play big instruments, we play big fat sounds. You need a big fat resonating chamber. You say A-E-I-O-U, not for ooh, and you see your jaw drop, your throat open, big resonating chamber, open throat, win-win.
Now, something else I want to ask you about, Mr. Williams, is when students take a big breath, should the breath be audible? Should we be able to hear the students intake the air? Or should we hear a silent breath, in fact, and not hear anything at all?
It should be as silent as possible. I mean, I've had 80 brass players in a brass line, drum corps brass line, that's getting ready to fill up a stadium. I do mean fill it up. And when they take that first breath to play a 4/4 for instance, you hear nothing. All you see is expansion, and you know they're taking the air in because you can see that something is happening, and then all of a sudden, voila, there's that sound. So if you have a noisy intake, that is absolutely a guarantee that your throat is not Open throat, closed throat. The louder your breathing sound, the more close your throat.
And in terms, that's going to make you have a more open sound. You're not going to be as stuffy, you're not going to be as congested, and you're going to increase your range on either breath instrument that you play. Baritone, trumpet, trombone, sousaphone. It's all air.
Yep.
So now let's go ahead and talk about long tones. I believe long tones is a fundamental building block in terms of tone building on any instrument, regardless of brass or not. Do you agree, Mr. Williams?
I agree. 100%.
Now, what are some basic exercises that the students can practice to get better at their long tones?
Hey, I generally start in the lower middle register, either on a low B flat or an F. I start first with a single note, a 4-count tone, an 8-count tone, a 16-count tone, gradually making the phrase long, getting the air moving, getting the lips doing what they need to do. Very, very easy. It's kind of a warm-up or a stretch. If you're getting ready to run like a jogger or something, you get that lip warmed up. And then I'll start doing either a scale, crescendo, decrescendos, and controlling that pitch. Sometimes a tuner understands to see that the pitch is not going sharp or flat as you get louder or softer. That's very important. Sometimes I'll do chromatics, either ascending or descending, depending on where I start on the horn. But I try to, the most important thing is it's done in a lower middle range at first and then gradually up. My long-term practice on long tones used to take me from low F below the staff to high D flat above high D flat. So we're talking 2.5 octaves up and right back down, because I don't stop once I get there. I come back down in the same way I went up. If it's diatonic, then it's diatonic. If it's chromatic, then it's chromatic. Do not rush this. It takes time, yes, but it builds endurance, it builds tone, and it ensures that your sound is getting more robust each and every day.
And you mentioned something very, very key that I still practice today. I just want to touch on it really quick. You're practicing your scales from one of your lowest notes on your horn to one of your highest notes that you feel comfortable playing. Yeah. Now, you're doing that in one scale. We're not just talking, I'm going to play 1 octave, 2 octaves. You're going from the lowest possible note in the D flat major scale on the trombone, which is F in 6th position, and playing up. Now, this is something I tried to do with my scale practice as well, regardless of what mode I'm in. I want to practice hearing a scale from my lowest possible note, not just from the root every time up to the root.
That's right.
We can find a whole new world of sounds and ideas from practicing like this that you're mentioning.
Yes. And sing it as well. You know, don't just, because I always say, if you can sing it, you can play it in tune. I am reasonable. I would take short breaks after an octave. I play 1 octave, 8 pitches if you're doing diatonics. And I would take a rest. Throw the lips out, whatever. You know, get a drink of water, whatever. Take another octave, right? And then take the 5th or whatever is left, and then take those little breaks at the same time. Just a matter of a few seconds to get the horn off the face, get some fresh blood in there, bring in fresh oxygen. So we're always building muscle, not destroying anything.
Very important that you're taking that time to build and not just constantly, let me try to play this double D flat every minute of every hour. We're working on something.
Yeah, for me, one of the most horrific things I ever hear are young players who come in and take their horn out of the case, and within 2 minutes, They're trying to play a high B flat. And that's like a great track star getting off the bus, running to the track, and then running a half mile or a quarter mile at full speed. Nobody does that wants to last.
Nope.
And
No.
if you do that as a trombone player, you will not last. You will not develop.
We need to treat our chops with respect, and in terms, our chops will respect us.
Right. I have a question for you, and
Absolutely.
The question: Do you use a wet embouchure or a dry embouchure?
You know, it tends to be drier. I will say that. I used to lick my lips before I played, and not only my lips, I licked the rim of my mouthpiece as well. And I noticed that started to lead to a bit of drying almost. And of course, I had chapstick and all of that, but I tend not to lick my mouthpiece or chops anymore. Now, if there's something uncomfortable in the mouthpiece, obviously I'll try to rub it out or move it around. But I tend to play as dry as possible.
Yeah. And I only mention that because there is no right or wrong way. There are some things that happen when you're starting to lick your mouth, and all that, lick your lips, that kind of stuff. There's a chance of putting some bacteria in places where that bacteria was not intended to be. The mouth is not the cleanest place in your body. Just saying that right now. So, if you can clean everything up real good when you finish practicing, that might prevent that from happening. But if you got some bacteria working places that's not supposed to be, they might dry your chops out and give you some tools and that kind of thing. So be careful with that. There's nothing right or wrong, and sometimes I found that people play with extremely dry lips. A little moisture is, how should I say, appropriate for them. It aids with the buzz. And then you talk about chapstick. I use DLT. It's called daily lip treatment. It's the same kind of thing, but I found that it works real good for brass players. And for those of us who were doing drum corps, where you get the horn in your face for 4 or 6 hours a day, the daily lip treatment was exactly that. You put this on your face every day. You wash your mouth every day. You clean your mouthpiece every day, or you're going to have a very ugly face. You know what I mean?
And you might get sick afterwards. I've heard of people actually getting sick because their mouthpiece and horns were not clean. Now, if you eat something before you buzz or play or warm up, just know that has to travel through your brass instrument, or woodwind or what have you.
Or wash your mouth with water before you put it to your horn. Otherwise, your instrument becomes a sophisticated garbage can. And about that. I have one of the things, talk about buzzing and buzzing the mouthpiece. For the more advanced players who have a pretty good buzz in the mouthpiece, you might try free buzz. And free buzz is simply buzzing the lip without benefit of the mouthpiece or anything else. And if you notice that before I did that, I did lick my lips. I'm one of those wet players. That's just the difference between Tyler and myself, and there's no right or wrong. What works for you, but do understand, if you want those people who are licking their lips, licking their mouthpiece, better keep things clean, or you're probably going to have some growth that you did not intend. This time is going very fast. I wonder if there are any questions about anything we discussed so far. All right.
I just want to touch on one thing Frank just talked about with the free buzzing. Now, this is something I was doing a lot in high school to strengthen not only my chops, but my ears as well. I would sit down with the piano, maybe F in the middle of the bass clef staff, start there, and then buzz chromatically down just to get some blood moving. And not only that, to hear those pitches with the piano and with my buzzing. Because if I can match those two, I know exactly where it needs to be on the trombone.
That's a good thing. I used to free buzz some of the more lento or adagio tempo pieces that I'd be studying.
Mm.
If studying, for instance, the slow movement of the Bluebells of Scotland, I'd always just buzz that through. It only goes to a F, you know, and it's right, very, very comfortable. And I just learned above that. It requires you to move the air because I guarantee you're not going to get a buzz unless the air is robust.
Now let's talk about the air. When we're going up higher, should the air be slower or faster in terms of movement speed?
Higher?
If we're playing higher on the trombone, should the air be moving faster or slower?
For me, and we haven't discussed this, the higher, the faster.
Absolutely.
That's it. The higher, the faster. And a lot of times, people who claim they have range problems. Oh, I just can't play these high notes. My armature is not strong enough. Well, it's your air that's not strong enough or fast enough or focused enough. So a lot of the problems that we attribute to the embouchure, to our lips, to our flesh, are really problems of the air.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
The wind instrument, baby, it's all about the air that is moving. That's what wind is. Air under pressure moving. That's what we do.
Mm-hmm. And so we're talking about air now. Let's go into lip slurs just for a little bit now before we have to wrap up the lesson. A lot of people believe, especially younger musicians starting out, that lip slurs actually requires the lips to do the majority of the work in order to get a clean and fluent break between partials. Now, do you believe it's the lips doing the work, or do you believe it's the air?
I think it's a combination of three things, and I think they may be equally distributed. I consider the lips to be important, yes, but maybe not important in most situations as the air is. Let's face it, the biggest gap on our horn is a bar horn. Between B flat to F, you have a fifth. Between F and B flat, you only have a fourth. Then you have a third, major third. Then you have a minor third. Then you have a very, very flat minor third. Then you have a second. So the higher you go, the closer the partials become. So it becomes counterproductive to consider that a lip problem. It becomes an air problem. So I always say, the lower you are on the horn, the more the lip and the jaw and the syllabication has to say about it. For instance, O, E, in that lower range. That is important. You're getting the jaw setting, you're getting the, you have a term for that, chambering properly.
Yes. Yes.
And the air, by necessity, is going to adjust to the chamber in the back of the tongue, the whole thing. But once you get above your tuning note, the biggest interval you have is between B flat and D, and that's just a major third. So the lip becomes a secondary consideration, and it is mostly about the air and the chambering application when it comes to a good lip slur. And I have been making trills on the trombone since I was about 10th grade. Wow. And I can tell you that at that speed in the upper range, it's mostly air.
How should our embouchure be shaped going near the high register to keep a good clear tone?
Well, I'll talk a little bit about it and I'll hand it off to Frank. You want your embouchure, again, you don't want it to change too much here. Now, there needs to be some shift, but the shift needs to be across here and down, okay? So if I'm buzzing low, my embouchure is sort of up more, but if I'm buzzing higher, it's more spread out, okay? Now, this is just free buzzing practice that you can do in the mirror. What really needs to change here is the air needs to be shaped from an O to an or O and A syllable to an E.
Yeah.
And I'll let Mr. Williams elaborate more.
Yeah, it helps. And I want to caution you. Tyler did discuss the wider lip setting in the upper register. However, one of the things that I have seen with a lot of young players is that they go so wide that it become tight, they thin the lip out so much that it can't vibrate. So you're not going to get a note because the lip is too tight and too thin to vibrate. And so make sure that when you have the embouchure focus right, that you understand the fuller you can keep your vibrating surfaces, which are your upper and lower lip, and be honest with you, mostly that upper lip, okay, make sure that you also don't put a lot of pressure on it, okay? Louis Armstrong was called Dipper Mouth because of that ring he had on his lip because he played with too much pressure, okay? That is not a good thing. It's like choking yourself and say, I'm gonna sing. You don't want to choke your lip and then say, hey, trombone, sing a high B flat. That is not going to happen. So make sure you're not using pressure and make sure that you're keeping the lips as full as possible so the vibrating surface is there and the lips are pliable to vibrate with the air that causes the vibration.
That's it.
I'm sorry.
That's it. No, you hit it, man. I love it. I love it. Trust me, I learn just as much as these kids do every time, man. Every time. Still learning every day.
Oh my God. I did this for probably much too long.
I love it. I hope that answered the question, Jacob. And if you have any more questions, just shoot them in the chat box here.
Anyone else? Okay. Can I talk about breathing, working on breathing and air support and diaphragm and all that? Can I talk about that for a second? If you're working
Absolutely.
Just briefly, the history is that when I was in graduate school one summer, I didn't have a trombone instructor. I had a trumpet instructor. And after hearing me play, he said, well, the one thing I have decided, I said, what's that? He says, I can't teach you anything about the trombone. I go, oh boy, it's going to be a long summer. He says, well, we can sure work on breathing. I said, there's something wrong with my breathing? He says, no, but these are wind instruments and you can never breathe well enough or efficiently enough. So he spent the whole summer working on breathing. Here are a couple of things I need to let you know. Number one, it is important that you are absolutely breathing diaphragmatically. And a lot of kids who think they are not. One of the things we are designed to do is when we are laying down, sleeping, or just resting, we automatically breathe diaphragmatically. You walk past anyone who's laying down, you see what's moving up and down. It is not their chest, it is their lower abdomen. That's because the air is going all the way to the bottom of the lungs. The idea for us is to approximate the feeling and the apparatus movement that we have while reclined, while sitting. So I quite often, when I find students who are moving their shoulders and all that kind of stuff and chest breathing, I have them lay back on a chair, on the floor, whatever we can do, and have them just breathe. And I'll put a little pressure on the diaphragm area, the belly, right on the belly button, and have them push against it to make sure they understand how to put pressure with that diaphragm muscle against those lungs to cause that air to move properly. And then I had them sit up and try to approximate that same feeling and then back down again. And eventually they will get it no longer how long they have breathed incorrectly. So check yourself by laying down on your bed, laying on the floor, laying across two chairs, and seeing if the breathing in that scenario is exactly what you're doing when you are erect or sitting in a chair or standing. And if it is not, that is the first key to the fact that your breathing is in need of repair. It is chest breathing, not diaphragmatic breathing, which means you're not using the entirety of your lungs. Okay? Got it?
Got it.
Okay, something else I like to do is take a piece of paper and bend it with the air and keep it bent at a steady arc. If it starts wavering, that shows you that your air speed is not consistent. If your air speed is not consistent, you will not have a consistent tone. Yeah, it's a little bit difficult. I'm normally
This Liz moving.
about as big as a thumb.
Uh-huh.
So I can focus the air, just tear off a piece about as big as your thumb. Then hold it like this and focus the air as if you're playing the horn, because when you play through the embouchure, it's such a small hole. So that way you're working on focusing the air, directing the air, and you're working on controlling the speed of the air and the velocity and volume of air. Keep it bent. Don't let it waver. You see what I'm talking about? You see it wavering?
That's tough. That's tough, man.
Gotcha. Yeah. You see?
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It causes you, because what happens is we get uncomfortable when we're just about out of air and we kind of let up and that thing starts waving. This forces you to, how should I say this, accelerate the use of the diaphragm muscle in order to keep the tone steady as you are using up the resources called air in your lungs.
And all you need is a little piece of paper. That's all you need.
Yep.
I'm keeping this.
Yeah, when I was a kid, they made me do it with a match. You had to do it with a match and bend the flame and not blow it out.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, not blow it out. But what would happen is sometimes you burn your finger. Back in those days, you could get away with that as a teacher. You can't get away with that these days. So I would not be using matches. Use that piece of paper, okay?
Got it. Yes, sir. But thank you so much, Frank, for this tip. I mean, this is something that I just found out about. And I mean, already just from practicing it twice, you saw the difference in the airspeed. And you can feel a more relaxed and controlled intake and release too.
Yeah. Yeah, and it feels different when you really do have control. When you put your air on cruise control, that's really what you're doing. You're putting the air on cruise control, so no matter how much gas you have in the tank, the speed remains constant. I have one thing that I like to do in addition to that. I let Tyler handle those things, but I have something else. If there is something that we are not covering that you're interested in, or if there's something that needs revisiting, leave that in the comment area with Steve, and he will pass it on to us, and we will include it in our next offering. We want to really serve you and to get as many of your concerns addressed as possible.
And so the next few lessons that we have still focus on the beginning and intermediate player. So for the next lesson, we're going to be discussing and focusing tonguing and articulation exercises. So today was long tones, buzzing, breathing, as well as lip slurs. And so that's going to be our second. And the last of the beginner series is going to discuss major scale and arpeggiation practice, how to control the trombone, guiding through major scales, also talking about some alternate positions, things to get the trombone, beginner trombonist ready for the intermediate and advanced levels.
All of that. One last thing I'd like to say, one of the best ways to work lip furred is on a mouthpiece alone, because there are no notches. You have to hear the fifth, you have to hear the fourth. Whenever I think of a fifth, like from low B flat to F, I think of twinkle, 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 little star, twinkle, twinkle, oh. And whenever I think of like the F to a B flat, I think of the fourth. My favorite song, The Bluebell of Scotland, one of the first of the prior pieces I ever played, as taught to me by the world famous John Swallow Sr. I know John Swallow the third or junior's in the room somewhere. But yeah, it was your granddad that put that on me. So there you have it.